Speaking of policing the police, we spoke a lot about VAR on the Terrace before. Big accusations have come out today from Leicester, and I thought it was very important to focus on this today, that the images being used by the PGMOL on television to justify an offside, they believe there is a cover-up going on here. They are using the wrong picture. The picture that's being used makes a cross look correct, where the actual image that Leicester City have produced shows they made the wrong decision. So more accusations of cover-ups, more accusations of VAR essentially now being used as a propaganda tool to protect and defend mistakes. So it isn't just Arsenal, it isn't just Arsenal, it isn't just Wolves, it isn't just Man United fans complaining about this. Another big accusation. This one won't get the media attention of a top six club, but this isn't the first time we've seen this accused of VAR. I mean, they're under a lot of pressure, Henry, aren't they, with these decisions at the moment?
Yeah, there's a lot of. It seems like there's a big decision every weekend now, to be honest with you. Like you said, not being a big six club, if this was any of our teams, there'd be a lot more media coverage. What I will say is, I don't know what your guys' opinions are. I think personally, the Premier League should adopt foreign officials, because if you look at the big games in the Champions League, they're rarely ever an English ref, and we seem to have more. I know, obviously, our media, we're obviously hearing it more than the Spanish media and Italian, etc. But there seems to be a hell of a lot more VAR decisions going wrong in our league than any other league in Europe. Like, I know there was one last year with Madrid, with Bellingham got that goal when it was the last second of the game, so it didn't count. But you can guarantee every single weekend now there's controversy. The Arsenal-Brighton game, this game, there'll probably be a big moment this weekend in the City-Arsenal game. And it just seems to be that these are becoming more big talking points rather than the actual football that's being played. Let the players play the game and just bring in better officials, because VAR is it's all opinionated. Every single decision that's being made, even if it's by VAR, the only one that's not is goal line technology. But everything else is opinionated. And if I say it's white, you say it's black. If you say jump, if you say up, I say down. There's too many different opinions coming in. I mean, obviously the media have got to report on it, but surely we can get better officiating than this every single weekend without foul.
And just to bring it some clarity, a few people are saying, well, how do they know? So the picture that you see in big here is what the Premier League, the PGMOL, and the TV networks have used to prove that the decision was onside. But what Leicester have claimed is that they have used the wrong frame, and this is the problem, is that this needs to be discussed and needs to be spoken about, because there is two different frames that show different outcomes. We know the automated, semi-automated system is coming into action, but I'll be honest with you, if they're still freeze framing it at the wrong time, that's not going to help the semi-automated system either. And I think this is the problem with it. It's become an absolute joke. And instead of admitting, and the reason why there's no trust is instead of admitting their mistakes, we saw Howard Webb do it we listened to them the other day on the Howard Webb show. They were getting involved with the yellow card decisions, which is against the rules. It's crazy. But sorry, you were going to say something, Gal.
The reason I thought there was not many foreign referees in the Premier League is because you need to first, in order to qualify to be a Premier League referee, you have to go through the FA's training, and you have to go through their training to be a referee in the Premier League. So that's why there's not many foreign referees, because the majority of the referees that went through the FA's training are English.
Can we not scrap that, Gal? Can we not just change that way of training? Because clearly the FA training is not producing quality referees. If you look at the Champions League semi-final and final of last year and the quarterfinals, there was 0 English referees. And the top 5 referees in the world, none of them are English. Look at the World Cup or the Euros. How many big VAR or officiating errors were there?
But you want to know something, bro? Honestly, I feel like every single fan base of their respective leagues would probably criticize their referees. The French league probably has the most amount of reds and yellows over the last couple of years, and their fan bases think their referees are the worst. But if we have a good French referee that plays in the Champions League, that's because we see the best of their best. We don't see their worst referees. So when we're comparing ourselves to other referees, we're not necessarily comparing ourselves fairly to the same as what we see in the Premier League, because we see some rookies coming through the Premier League, the best of the best referee in the Champions League. So it's not really we're not comparing we're comparing almost apples to oranges here.
Yeah, I don't think it's about the whole French league or the whole Spanish league. It's about looking at who the best referees are in the world and saying, well, let's go and get them instead.
You could do that, but Terry, what is the likelihood of that person wanting to leave their country? And also the rulings in the English game will have to change to then allow foreign referees to come into England. They did it more, maybe potentially, to protect English referees having security with their jobs.
So the same question I would ask you this is, when English football teams have wanted to improve in the last 30 years, we've gone out across the world and brought in managers and players. I don't see it being I think the Premier League itself should be looking at this and saying, maybe the PGMOL isn't fit for purpose. Maybe we need to look at something different. Maybe we have to look at recruiting some of the best referees and best people from around the world that run those associations. The motivation, we have more money than all these other leagues. That you would assume that means we can afford to pay referees more money. If you've got a referee earning 40 grand a year to referee in France, and you suddenly say we want to make one of our chief referees in the Prem, there's £250,000 a year. That's a huge. And the fact is, they probably wouldn't even have to leave home. They just get a little helicopter, a little private jet for games, fly home again. I think there'd be loads of motivation for these individuals. It could change their lives financially. And I just think it's something the Premier League should be looking at, because this Leicester situation, there's controversy in so many games. And I just think so much of it isn't the rules. It is the malpractice by the individuals in charge, for me personally.
Will the FA, my only pushback, Terry, will the FA change that? Because they would need to allow it. It wouldn't be this respective leagues.
Again, I think your challenge makes sense in terms of maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't let it. But I think it's the wrong conversation. We as football fans, in my opinion, should be pushing for what we think is the right thing to improve football, as opposed to let's not talk about it because the FA might say no to it. For me, that's just, again, you could be right. The FA may say no, but if they say no to it, then we push harder, right? And our job is to push as football fans for our game to improve, just like the regulation conversation. But yeah, I just wanted to give that a shout out because I saw it and I just thought another piece of horrendous officiating that's caused problems for another football team. Fans should also push to have the same pitch owner scheme Chelsea have to protect their clubs. I agree, Gav. That's a really, really good idea. I think it's a fundamentally important idea. If people were saying, Terry, you only speak about this stuff because you actually know nothing about football. If that's your interpretation, then fair enough. But I mean, I will sleep very well tonight. I'm going to throw that back. If you're going to attack me, I'm going to attack you back. Maybe it's because I just have the intellect to talk about the deeper issues in football and not just the kicking about the leather part. Maybe I have the intellect to understand all facets of the game as opposed to just the tactical talk.
Just out of interest, Terry, what is for you personally the biggest issue in football or the biggest problem in football?
The Glazers. But for me personally, it's the Glazers. But outside of Man United, biggest issue in
we'll
football,
keep it Premier League because obviously
are we talking running of the football, officiating, or the actual physical game itself?
The actual game itself.
In terms of on the pitch, I think there's not enough freedom in the game anymore. It's too system orientated. Everybody's obsessed with patterns of play. That element for me, I would like to see change. The back end of the Champions League last year, because of who was left in it, was some of the best football I've seen in years, because it was some decent systems and solid shapes, but it was in attack. Every team remaining, it was go out and attack, do your thing. And I quite liked that. So I would like to see that kind of come back. In terms of regulation, VAR for me is the biggest issue. And the maddest bit is the first 18 months, 2 years of it, I thought it was amazing. I loved how it was when it first came in. It got most of the correct decisions. Anything they missed, they would rectify. I loved it. Since Howard Webb's got in charge, it has become a propaganda tool to make the referees look like they got the decisions right. The problem is we live in 2024 with TVs, cameras, the internet, media everywhere. You can't hide this stuff anymore. You can't hide it. You know what I mean? Especially with social media, we've all got a platform.
Terry, I think there's an easier answer. It's really the money. The money with the clubs, the amount of games, the money for tickets, the money for players' wages, just the amount of money in football has created a snowball effect and caused a lot of these issues.
So all the money in football has made referees get worse.
No, the money in football has made more injuries, more games, players making way more money, owners making way more money, having less ambition.
Yeah, but those
you said. I really do think the root of everything in football going down, and also at the same time as we say going down, also meaning that in certain areas it does improve. But the main thing that makes people fall out of love with football, I would say, is the money and the ripple effect from the money that's ruining it.
The thing I'd say back to that is, if the manager's looking at his squad and he's seeing consistent injuries coming up, surely he could. Manchester City do not need to play in the Club World Cup next year. That's an extra, 12, 16 games because of the competition. They don't need to play in that. If Man City, towards the back end of the Premier League season, have got Rodri's picked up an injury, Haaland, Ruben Diaz, all their key players have got injured, then surely that's down to the manager of the actual team to then have a serious conversation with the hierarchy of that football club. Because I saw that stat. I think Rodri played, 78 games in the last 12 months?
I do agree with that. I get annoyed at the players moaning about having too many games, but they never call their own club out. That gets on my tits. Gets on my tits. It really, really does. It's, football's making us play too many games. No, your employer is, but you're willing to take the money. There becomes a little bit of a to and a fro in there, personally. So there we go. Viewers, hit the like and the share buttons. Make sure you're tuning in. I'm sorry to offend the viewers for the next section, but we're going to be talking directly about football on the pitch and the grass. I'm sorry that we're doing that.
Are we qualified enough to talk about it?
I think we are. I think we are qualified to speak about it.